Okay, so we are now to slide number 3, and what we're looking at is a slide that says ATP, energy for cells. And I've drawn a picture of adenosine triphosphate, and it's a nucleotide. It's an RNA molecule, and that means that it has a ribose sugar, and it has, in this case, adenine, because remember we'd said A's and U's and C's and G's when we talked about RNA, and we'd say, and the typical RNA nucleotide would consist of the nitrogen-containing base, the sugar, and a single phosphate. Oh, there it is. And a single phosphate. Now you notice up there, we have 3 of them on there. And I've drawn these negative charges on them because they're all negatively charged. Now remember we said opposites attract, and the same, that means they oppose. So if you take a magnet has a positive pole and a negative pole, and if you put the positive and negative pole together, they go click. But if you flip it around, so it's a negative and a negative, it's you have to push to make them stick together. That's what we're looking at here. We've added 3 phosphates on here. And so what does it take to add those phosphates? Energy. So the molecule that is crawling around, moving around in your cells, transferring energy from one location to another, is this thing, ATP. It is the energy carrying molecule in your cell. Now, why ATP? Why not sugar? You just ate that candy bar, remember? Well, we have to have it's a small packet of energy. So it's a very small amount of energy, and it's just the right size to do work in a cell. And so we said energy is the ability to do work. So let me flip my slide. Okay, so the next slide, the 4th slide in, it basically is what I put on the board here. And then the 5th slide is a color glossy photograph or image of the same thing. It just shows you, this isn't letters and, flat stuff. It is a 3-dimensional substance. And so that's nice. And then we go to the next slide, slide number 6. And so it ends up, if you look at my picture up here, if you look carefully at my picture, I've drawn all of this in black, and then we've got a blue phosphate up there. Now, the reason I've done that is what happens is that blue one is only on there for a short time, and then it gets popped off. So if this molecule right here is called ATP, adenosine triphosphate, if you lose one of those phosphates, what do you call it? Adenosine diphosphate, ADP, that means 2 phosphates. And so when we talk about the energy cycle in this molecule, we're going to talk about how in the mitochondria, remember that organelle that we learned about? We said it's the powerhouse of the cell. This is where ADP gets that 3rd phosphate added to it. And then what happens? This now ATP goes off somewhere and does work. And when it does work, it releases that energy by popping that phosphate off, and we're left with ADP plus a phosphate. And what do? They go find the mitochondria and do it again. So it's a cycle. And so it's a short-term energy. So in muscle contraction, what you have is a protein. And again, proteins have a three-dimensional shape. And this protein can take this shape or this shape. And so what happens is the protein, I'm trying to get far enough away so you can see. Okay, so what happens is the protein, gets extended to this form where it binds to another protein and pulls under the influence of ATP. ATP comes in, releases the head, causes it to reach forward, grab, and pull. That's work. That's flexion. Yeah, that's muscle contraction. This is this molecule. That's what caused, I just did it just then. So you have this constant cycling of ATP into ADP plus a phosphate, and then ADP plus a phosphate being used to create ATP, and this stuff is moving all over inside of your cells, allowing you to do work. Now, where do you get the energy to put that third phosphate on there? From the candy bar. We have a process that is where you can make ATP from those sugars and fats and other high energy molecules that you have consumed. And that's the energy that is used to make ATP. Pretty interesting, huh? Okay, so we have slide number 7 is showing this cycling around and around we go. Where it stops, nobody knows. That thing, it keeps going on and on and on. And that's how energy is produced in your cells into a form that can be used by your cells. Okay, so I already mentioned. Okay, I'm going to go on and stop, and we'll come back to coupled reactions. So I said we have this process of sticking the phosphate on there, and then it's released, which allows you to do work. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the next video.